It's 5:34 now. So I would request Dr. Mauricio Garrido. Maybe he can start his talk. So over to Dr. Mauricio Garrido.
Thank you. Thank you very much again for allowing me to speak, and thank you all for coming to listen. It's really nice to see that you were inspired by the first talk to come to the second one. So let's try to get back into it. Let's see. Start the slideshow. All right. So here's session 2 of Demystifying Vedic Cosmology. It's called Decoding the Map of Bhu-Mandala. Today we're going to look into recap of last session, just to remind all of you, because probably by now it is all gone or almost all gone. So just a quick recap of last session. I'll just speed through it. And then we're going to get into what is Bhu-Mandala? What was this whole weird thing that we were seeing last time? And we'll see it as a polar projection, and we'll look at two possibilities of a polar projection. One is the standard accommodation model, and the other one is what we call the Antarctic model. And we will also be addressing something very important, which is this Bhu-Mandala flat Earth, because there are devotees out there who are claiming this. So let's go through the slides from last time. We were asking, we were looking at how the scientists have asked very important questions, and such as how old is the universe, what is the universe made of, are we alone? And what we saw is that they have gotten very good understanding of some portions of these questions through their studies through the years. But there are also unsolved mysteries, such as dark matter and dark energy. What is the fate of the universe? Is there something before the Big Bang? Such as other universes that could have been there. Are there parallel universes? And if so, like what types are there? And also, is there intelligent life out there? So there's plenty of questions that are still bewildering us. And because of that, then we started looking, at the Vedic paradigm. Is there something in it, in the Puranas that can guide us, or can give us at least some ideas as to what everything is? And we saw first the big picture. One is, okay, so there's the Brahmajyoti, and in the Brahmajyoti there's the spiritual worlds and the material worlds. And within these, if we look at just the material worlds, we saw that there was one expansion of Krishna, which is Mahavishnu, and from him unlimited universes come, and ours is just one of them. We looked at how, yes, there were innumerable universes created from Mahavishnu, how the universe expands and from him, and that was and we started looking at the correlations with modern science. The universes have, according to the Puranas, have different sizes and are habitable. They all have a finite lifetime. The multiverse, the Vedic multiverse, is cyclical. And we also looked at how there were elements that the different elements developed from Mahavishnu. So the story is a little bit more complicated. And what I pointed out here was that this includes matter and aspects of consciousness, and also theology, since the origin of all this is Mahavishnu. So we have here an interesting play of not just matter, which is what current science is looking at, but also at consciousness and theology. Then we looked at how the universe has layers, and how this universe is egg-shaped, or Brahmanda. And there's this that is called Bhu-Mandala that divides the Brahmanda into two regions: the heavenly region and the subterranean region. The subterranean region is filled with water, And this Bhu-Mandala is a series of concentric rings of dvipas and oceans, of islands and oceans. And these islands and oceans alternate island, ocean, having Mount Meru in the middle. The seven innermost of these rings are called Saptadvip, or the seven islands, right? And there are three regions beyond Saptadvip, which are Loka, Kanchani Bhumi, the Golden Land, and Aloka Varsha. And between Aloka Varsha, which is the last one, and Kanchani Bhumi, there's this mountain that is called Loka Mountain. Anything beyond Loka Mountain, outside of Loka Mountain, is said to be in total darkness. And then we talked about also how the last island of the Saptadvip, of the seven islands, has this round mountain that divides Pushkar-dvip in half, that is called Manasotra Mountain. And this Manasotra Mountain is connected to the chariot of the sun. We also talked about Jambu-dvipa, the centermost island, with Mount Meru or Mount Sumeru, however you want to call it, in the middle of it. And this Jambu-dvipa, this center island of Jambu-dvipa, is divided into 9 different varshas, or countries or regions, however you. And the southernmost is called Bharat Varsha, and it is it is divided from all the other ones by this great mountain range that is called the Himalayas. But the Himalayas were extremely high, 10,000 yojanas, compared to Mount Everest, which is 0.7 yojanas, right? We also talked about how beyond Bharat Varsha, there are all these other varshas that are actually called the earthly heavens. And the inhabitants there live for 10,000 years. They have bodies like thunderbolts. It's things that we do not see. We also talked a little bit more about all of these heavenly places, earthly heavens, and also about the subterranean heavens that are below Bhu-Mandala, and how here is where these are even more opulent than Divya Svarga, where Lord Indra lives, the celestial heavens. But then there's also below these ones, there's Naraka, or hell, and it's a place of suffering. And we noted how this hell is not eternal, like the Christian or Muslim or Judaic hell, but it's just temporary. And we also have below that, there's the Pitriloka, which is a heavenly region where the forefathers live. And we said that this Pitriloka may have something to do with the Christian out-of-body experiences. Below all of this, and just floating on top of the ocean that fills half of the universe, is Anantashesha. So this takes us to today. That was what we saw last time. So today we want to see if we can describe the motions of the sun and the planets. There is something called the celestial sphere. When you're doing astrology or astronomy, whichever, when you want to measure the position of the sun and the planets, you stand somewhere on Earth, right? And from here you just extend your where you're standing. You just imagine that there's a plane that goes all the way out, to a very large radius, and everything above you is like this dome, this celestial dome, or the celestial sphere. And the point right above you is called the zenith, and you can see the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic. That's the path of the sun. When you look at it from your point of view, the sun is going around you. This is the Earth-centered model. And what we're looking at here today is that it is very possible that to interpret Bhu-Mandala, this flat plane of concentric rings, as a polar projection of the Earth. You will see in here that the polar projection is nothing but, you know, like squashing of in some way of the Earth into a map that we are familiar with, which is up here, right? And the thing about the projection, though, is that you have to define, like, well, what are the distances, right? So there's going to be two ways in which I'm going to look at distances. There are many different ways, but two of them have stuck out for us in our studies. One is if and this is what we're going to call the standard accommodation, and I'll tell you why it is called the standard accommodation in just a minute. But it goes, if you say that the distance from Mount Meru, which is at the center of Jambu-dvipa, the center island, if you take the distance from the center from Mount Meru all the way up to Bharatvarsha, and say that that is the distance from the North Pole to Kanyakumari, which is the southernmost tip of India, right? Then you can make something like this. You can say that basically the northern hemisphere is Jambu-dvipa, and that the rest of the Earth is basically, well, almost all the rest of the Earth is basically the saltwater ocean that surrounds the Jambu-dvipa, the center island, right? Now, why is it called the standard accommodation? Well, it is seen that most Jyotish astronomers throughout the ages, they seem to do this kind of thing. To the left here, we have a picture of a globe that is attributed to Maharaj Jai Singh of Jaipur, that goes back to the 18th century. And if you notice, this is exactly what they did. They took this Bhu-Mandala, and they did the inverse projection, right? So they took it from the plane into a globe. And if you notice here, the northern hemisphere is basically Jambu-dvipa. Down here it's India. But you will also notice that that the rings of Plakshadweep and Shamali-dweep and all of those different all of those different rings, they're all lined up with the same thickness. And that's not what we remember. If you remember that there was this doubling of the thickness, that every island and ocean, the next one that is surrounding it is twice the thickness of it. So, you know, you would say, like, well, why did they do that? Well, maybe one is that it's very, very hard to do all of that in a physical sphere. We try to do we try to maintain those proportions of the island and the ocean, doubling its size. And when you do the inverse projection, it actually becomes very, very small. So let me explain here. When you do the inverse projection of Bhu-Mandala onto the sphere, maintaining that you know, this northern hemisphere is Jambu-dvipa, the center island, then what you end up is that the first island that you encounter, the very first island, will be at 48 degrees south of the equator. That is very near Tierra del Fuego, which is the southernmost tip of South America in Argentina. And basically you end up with you know, the first island going from about 48 degrees south of the equator to 71 degrees south of the equator. This green line here basically shows in this picture down here in the left, lower left, you will see that there's this green bar in here that represents the thickness of the first island beyond Jambu-dvipa. Now you still have another five more dvipas, or 5 more islands, to fit in what is the rest of this globe. And we did it through a computer program, because it's very difficult to do it otherwise. And here's what it looks like in the lower right corner. Some people were asking last time, well, how can we use computers and modern technology in order to look at these things? Well, this is one way. We can do these inverse projections and get a feel for what it really looks like. Now, what we get from this information here is that if we take Bhu-Mandala as this polar projection, and specifically making it such that the northern hemisphere is Jambu-dvipa, then what we see is that Jambu-dvipa, along with the saltwater ocean, basically is representing all the habitable Earth. What do I mean by habitable? Well, the rest of this projection that we're not showing here is basically Antarctica, which it's not habitable by humans. Let's say that. So this standard accommodation just tells us that Bhu-Mandala could be with this projection is giving us a view of Jambu-dvipa as the habitable Earth. Now, why do we care about that? Well, because with this map, then Shukadev Goswami in the Bhagavatam is able to tell Maharaj Parikshit about things like the seasons or the phases of the moon or eclipse. It can use it for astrological reasons on this polar projection. And it also includes the descriptions of South Central Asia that we see in the Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, it tells us about the river Ganges and the Himalayas. Well, now we know where we can find it in this map. And how is it that it tells us about the movements of the sun and such? Well, if you see here, we have the equator, we have the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and the sun goes from the Tropic of Cancer all the way to the Tropic of Capricorn within the year, and it has this daily motion around the Earth, and also it has a yearly motion. The yearly motion, I'm describing it with this red line, right? Now, when you project this onto the polar projection, this is what it looks like down here. And the way that we can understand the movement of the sun in this projection is the following. Imagine that this lower, this map down here is rotating around in the clockwise direction, right? And that the sun is going and it rotates at a rate of 1 rotation in 24 hours. So that's how it is going. But the sun itself is slowly moving along this plane in the opposite direction. While the plane is rotating in a clockwise rotation, the sun is going in a counterclockwise rotation that takes 365 days around. Now, with this interpretation of Bhu-Mandala as a projection, we're able to see that, oh yeah, there's no problem understanding this, because this is just, you would say, well, this is a very weird way of the sun moving. And it's like, well, it's just the way that it moves when you project it onto a plane. But otherwise, you can see it as just the sun going around the Earth which is a simpler motion, or even simpler motion if you translate this into the sun-centered, heliocentric motion. So all of these are equivalent, but they just look different when you put it into different coordinates like that. So this yearly motion, we can see it. Now the eclipses. How do we understand the eclipses? Well, if you understand that the Earth is really a globe and not a plane, then we will see that the eclipses happen in the way that we usually know them. How is that? Right here in the center, there's the Earth. And if we take this to be the solar path, and then the lunar path, this other one, then at these points where the solar path and the lunar path meet, that we can call Rahu and Ketu. This is what the Jyotish Shastras say. This is how the Jyotish Pandits used to understand Rahu and Ketu to be these nodes, these lunar nodes of where the lunar path and the solar path meet. Then when the sun is at one place and the moon is at the other, then that's when you have an eclipse. Or when both the sun and the moon are in the same spot, either here at Rahu or Ketu, then you will also have another eclipse. It is important to also mention that commentators such as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Sridhar Swami, which are commentators of the Bhagavatam, they explain that Rahu doesn't actually swallow the sun. They say that it may be more of a way of speaking, like, well, Rahu swallows it in darkness, but not actually swallowing it. So that's something important for those of you who know a little bit more about the story of Rahu. Now, from what I have shown you here so far, Bhu-Mandala, we can see that it's not a projection, it's not flat, but it's actually a projection of the Earth globe onto a plane. From what we saw here is that Bhu-Mandala is not flat Earth because otherwise everyone should be able to see the pole star, right? If you have the pole star, which is right on top of this flat plane, then everyone all around the Earth should be able to see the pole star. That is not happening. People in Australia cannot see the pole star, right? So we that is one argument against this idea that Bhu-Mandala is the flat Earth. Also, you would not be able to explain the motion of the sun. This weird motion that we just put here. You noticed that it was you cannot explain why the sun is moving in that way. It's just like, oh, well, it's just moving like that. Instead, in here, with this explanation, you can actually give the mechanics or why it would move in that strange way. It's just the way that it would move according to this projection. But then let's look at another evidence, which is that the sun, according to the Bhagavatam, actually according to the Bhagavad Gita, the sun illuminates the universe and not just a portion of Bhu-Mandala, like a spotlight. According to the Bhagavatam, it is said in verse 521, 8 through 9, and also in the Vishnu Purana, that when the sun is at midday, it's on one side. At the other side, it will be midnight, and where on one side of the Earth is at sunrise, the other side opposite to it is at sunset. Now we understand that completely, obviously, when we look at a globe, right? But this does not happen when you have a flat plane. Let me show you why not. Imagine that this is the flat plane, right? The flat Earth, and the sun comes up and rises, right? If it rises here, it will rise everywhere. So here at this spot and also the opposite side, it will be sunrise. It will be sunrise in this side, and it will be everywhere will be sunrise. There will be no area of total darkness when the sun is up, right? Well, then what happened? the flat Earth people, they noticed that this was a bad thing, right? So they said, well, it's not that the sun is going up and down. The sun is just going all around like this. But that doesn't help. Why? Because whether the sun is here or here or here or anywhere, you will always be able to see the sun. When the sun is at this point, at the opposite point, it's not midnight. You can still see the sun. So what do the flat Earth people generally say? Well, no. The problem is that you're thinking that the sun is illuminating everywhere, but it's actually just illuminating in like a little spotlight right on top of the place where it's going. So it would only do this portion here, and as it moves around, it just moves that spotlight all around, and that's how you explain it. Well, that may be fine for the flat Earth people who don't have Bhagavatam, but this would contradict then, the idea that there's a sunrise, the sunset, and like that, and in the Bhagavad Gita, it would put the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam into a contradiction, because the Bhagavad Gita says that the sun is illuminating all of the universe. So it's important to understand that most of the people who are claiming flat Earth, they're claiming it because they have watched a lot of YouTube videos on flat earthers on flat Earth from Christians who don't have the problem of having to reconcile their theories to the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam. Now, there's another thing, which is the sharp day-night boundary in Bhu-Mandala. Let me show you what that means. You have this sharp line, which is called the terminator, that divides day and night on Earth. During the equinoxes, when the sun is here along the equator, it's a straight line, right? And as the sun moves around, there's this line that divides the Earth in the sunlit region and the non-lit region. It just moves along with it. During the summer solstice, when the sun comes closer to the north, at the point of the Tropic of Capricorn, then this terminator, this sharp line that divides the day and the night, it curves, as you can see here, illuminating most of the north. But when it goes down to the winter solstice, down here, when it goes to when the sun is at the Tropic of Capricorn, the terminator, as you can see, moves in such a way that most of the south will get the sunlight, and not so much the north. Now, this makes perfect sense if you're seeing the Earth as a globe, and you're just saying that this is the way that the shadow of the sun is projecting onto the globe. But it will make no sense to talk about this if the Earth is actually flat, because you would say, like, why would this line change its shape as the sun goes in and out? It makes no sense. Also, by doing this, we're explaining the seasons. If you're seeing the whole picture, we just explain the seasons as being just being the same as how we understand them. But when you do it on a projection, this is how it would look like. The Aitareya Upanishad, besides that, suggests the idea that the globe, that the idea of a globe dates back to the Jyotish Shastra period. Here's a little video of how it looks like. As you see here, the sun is going towards the north, and now it's going back towards the equinox. Now we're at the equinox, and now it's the winter solstice. That is how the sun moves, and along with the terminator. So I have given you so far 4 different explanations, and I'll get 5 different explanations of why the flat Earth would not be able to explain Bhu-Mandala. And so the understanding is that our understanding is that this idea of a flat Earth is not supported. I might also say that in many conversations of Srila Prabhupada and and also in purports, he in the Bhagavatam, he opposes this idea of a flat Earth. Now let's go into another projection, right? The previous projection that I told you about, I said that we were going to look at the Jambu-dvipa basically as the northern hemisphere, but there are other ways in which you can look at the projection. One way is to say that, well, and this model I'm going to call the Antropoprijni model because of the devotees that worked on it. If you take the distance from the North Pole to the South Pole to be the distance between the center of Saptadvipa all the way up to the edge of Saptadvipa, which means from Mount Meru all the way up to the ocean of sweet water, then you will have another type of projection, which would basically mean that this Saptadvipa would be as big as basically the solar system, almost as big as the solar system, right? So what we're doing here is we're extending that projection of the Earth beyond just Jambu-dvipa here, but all the way out to just a little bit beyond the orbit of Uranus, just beyond a little bit beyond the orbit of Uranus. And now by doing this, it will include the distances to the sun and the planets. That's what we get from doing this. So now we're expanding, this thing to do that. And the nice thing that comes with it is that we start getting these correlations. You will notice here that there's a superposition of 2 things. One is the superposition of the Jambu-dvipa, which is in the not Jambu-dvipa, Saptadvipa, which is on the back, right? Bhu-Mandala is on the back. You can see the island ocean that is in the back, and you can also see the orbit of Venus. Now, this is the orbit that comes from an Earth-centered view, right? If you're here at the center of Earth, the sun, it will go around you, right? And the rest of the planets are going to go around the sun. So as the sun goes around, the planets go around the sun, and they will start making this spiral movement. So that's how you see the orbits of the planets from an Earth-centered point of view. And you will notice here, a striking thing, which is something that Sariputta Prabhu or Richard L. Thompson noticed a couple of years ago, which was that they seem to line up these orbits, the inner orbit, the inner part of the orbit and the outer parts of the orbit, they line up with these features of Bhu-Mandala. Now, it's not always perfect. Venus here is a very good example, but it's not always perfect. It's here you see in Mars that, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, maybe here, the outer one is close to this feature number 15, and the inner one is maybe like around 10. but it's not always perfect, but it's very close, right? Now the correlation, as I said, is not perfect, but it is highly improbable that it is just by chance. You know, we have errors here that are very, very small, and you, especially when you see an error that is, for example, this big, and one that is small, it's because, for example, this is looking at Saturn, and Saturn, you will notice that the outer edge is close to the edge of the Loca mountain, but the inner edge doesn't really line up with anything. So that's why it has a large error. But this 4% error has to do with how close it gets to this outer edge. So it is very, very close. And as I said, Sariputta Prabhu also looked at how improbable this is. And what he found is that there are several close alignments that actually give weight to the hypothesis that Bhu-Mandala may have been deliberately designed as a map of the solar system. This idea is not completely new of Bhu-Mandala as a map of the solar system. In fact, we find in the works of Sri Tiruvenkata Swami in the 19th century that him being an Indian traditionalist, he considered this interpretation of Bhu-Mandala as appropriate. He made this diagram with the different planets, like the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and all that, and he mapped it onto a map, an Earth-centered map of the solar system. Now, this is not the only nice thing about this Android-Prishni model, which explains the motions of the sun and the planets, but we also get many nice correspondences because of the doubling rule of the islands and oceans. You might have said, well, you know, what is the whole point of having this island ocean and then twice the size island ocean and then twice the size island ocean? Well, if you do this doubling rule and you project, you know, you do the inverse projection of Bhu-Mandala onto a sphere, then what you get to see is that, for example, here at Mount Meru would be the North Pole, okay, fine, and the freshwater ocean would be at the South Pole, okay, so that's what we said. But then you will start seeing that the Yogurt Ocean is at 0.888 degrees, and which is very close to the equator. Shaka-dvip will be very close to the Tropic of Cancer. The Manasotara mountain, which is that mountain that connected the chariot of the sun, you know, with the Mount Meru, is at the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the that outermost point at which the sun goes, right? And we get so many of these other things. Even the Arctic Circle, the northernmost land, and interestingly enough, there was this impasse by passenger ship until 1994 that happened at 80 degrees north of the equator. Now because of the global warming, this is no longer the case. You know, the polar caps have melted somewhat, and you can go beyond with a ship. You can go beyond the 80th degree north of the equator. But up until 1994, that was not the case, and this lines up with the Liquor Ocean. So there are interesting features that we're seeing here are lining up. So I've finished this 15 minutes before today, because I know that there must be a lot of questions, and I think that this topic is best if we talk about it more than me just going through more slides. So I'm open for questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mauricio Garrido. So now the participants, they can ask questions. So we would prefer that participants can type their questions on chat box. So I would read out the question accordingly. I think somebody has raised his hand. Who is Bharadraj Govindadas? You just type your question, please. Before I think participant ask any question, so maybe I can start with a question. So,
Sure.
so it was a wonderful discussion. So to see how ancient scriptures, the way, I mean, the flat Earth kind of that kind of notion is presented, but that is not really true. I mean, there is a better understanding that we can reconcile with the 3D structure as you described the projection. So my question is, can there be any alternate ways of looking at these things? So as Sadapudha Prabhu and others, your team described the stereographic projection. So could there be any other kind of complicated projections that may map onto this scenario better?
Definitely. If you noticed, I looked at two ways in which we could do it, and it was all based on defining like how do you want to correlate the planisphere of the Earth with Bhu-Mandala. And here I said, let me take the distance from the North Pole to the South Pole to be that distance between Mount Meru and the edge of Saptadvip, right? And on a previous one, I said, well, let me take the distance from the Mount Meru to Bharatvarsha to be the distance between the North Pole and Kanyakumari. So by making different correlations like that, we can get many different projections, and maybe some of them might show us something else that is out there, for anybody to try out. Let's see what comes out of it. These are just two very nice projections, but there may be other interesting projections that we have not looked into.
Yes, right. Yeah, just to add on to that, so usually there is a notion that prevails in when you talk about Sabda Praman or kind of ancient text that we refer to. So there, I mean, so one may bring out any kind of structure. I mean, such kind of techniques to match with current observations, scientific observations. So, but then how do you really? It's kind of bit goes little difficult for some time to. I mean, the sages they saw in their very elevated vision all these things, and so to really understand such things, we perhaps require transcendental vision, as it as maybe like Sukadeva Goswami. So how much? I mean, what could be the limitation of such approach? Or certainly, there's a great advantage. We are able to reconcile things. So it's just a maybe.
Yeah, like so. Here's the thing. We're trying to make an effort here to understand what is this Bhu-Mandala at all, right? But then we know that the sages also had this special mystic vision that would help them. That we're going to talk about in the next session because if you notice, like we've been able to show what is it that we can see. How is it that this Bhu-Mandala correlates to what we can see? But there are also descriptions of Bhu-Mandala that we cannot see. For example, this Mount Meru is a mountain that is solid gold, right? And it's as high as 2 to 3 times the distance from the Earth to the moon. Nobody has, well, very few people have seen this, and only because they have special vision. How is it that this is possible? We're not able to just explain it by doing these projections. You have to use something else, and that's what we're going to be talking about next session.
Okay, thank you. So there are some questions now. So it is asked by Bharadraj Govinda. So he's saying, Srila Prabhupada says that the different types of ocean exist in different parts of the universe. But Antardip Prishni model correlates different oceans of the Earth planet to the different oceans of Bhu-Mandala as it was shown. How to reconcile these things?
Yeah, so if you start going into Prabhupada's purports, you see that Prabhupada was making an honest attempt to try to also reconcile as he was translating, because he was translating and he was seeing like all of these very strange things, like an ocean of ghee, an ocean of liquor, an ocean of yogurt, of milk, right? And how do you explain that, especially to all of these graduates from IIT and Americans and Europeans that don't even haven't even heard about anything like that. How do you explain it to them, right? The Bhagavatam doesn't tell you how to correlate any of these things, and the acharyas they have tried also very different methods. If you see Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Sridhar Swami, they take one point of view, and Viraragavacharya takes another view. So even the acharyas do not agree, with the different interpretations. And so Prabhupada, he also tried, his level best to try to see, like, okay, how can we explain it to them? And one idea that he, which is a good idea, is to say, like, well, what about, if these are different planets in different places? Because dvipa can mean an island, but it could also be like, you could also see it as an island in the ocean of space. And if that is the case, then the ocean that surrounds it would be like the ocean that is in that planet, right? So that is a very educated guess, but it's nowhere in the purports of the acharyas. It is Prabhupada, trying to do, and he tried different things, right? This was one way in which he tried to reconcile it. He also he would also sometimes say, like, just like, forget about it, just take the Bhagavatam as it is, and don't think about it. Just chant your rounds and and go about. Depending on different people, he would try different things, and he specifically gave the mandate to the Bhaktivedanta Institute to look into this, because he was not entirely sure of how he could explain it in a very cogent way. He had you can see that in the archive, that he asked his disciples to go and try to find the Jyotish Pandits, the most learned Jyotish Pandits, and bring them to work on that and help them. But none of them could really help him in this thing. So that's why he said, okay, then the Bhaktivedanta Institute, all of you who are PhDs, look into these problems and try to solve it. You have good brains. Try to come up with good ways to understand it. He even told it. It's on the record that he even told some disciples to even rewrite the 5th canto, so that it could be more accessible that way.
Thank you. So there is another question by Abhishek Panchal. So he's saying that I have heard in schools that sun is fixed at the center and all the planets they're revolving around it. Does the current science still accept it? how Srimad Bhagavatam sees this planetary movement around the sun with the sun moving.
Okay. Well, yeah, the heliocentric versus Earth-centered model. So the way that modern science looks at it is that there is no center. The sun is the planets are revolving around the sun, and the sun is revolving around the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is revolving around the local clusters of galaxies, and that local cluster is revolving around bigger clusters. So everything is moving. They say there is no center for any of this. So that's the first thing. So what is the difference then between the Earth-centered or the sun-centered model like that? Is just a frame of reference. You have to have a frame of reference to do anything, right? Now, you could put yourself in the sun and say, like, this is how the planets move. And so they will move in elliptical orbits around you. But if you shift that frame of reference to somewhere on Earth, right, you have to do a mathematical calculation. Those are Galilean transformations. You learn that in first year of engineering or physics, right? And even in school, they tell you you will get something about these Galilean transformations. You just do a simple Galilean transformation, which is done all the time, and you will see that if you put the frame of reference, the origin of the frame of reference to be Earth, the sun will go around you, right? And the planets will go around the sun, and you will have this spiral these kind of spirals, right? So there is no contradiction. You just have it's just a frame of reference. You could also go to Mars. You put your frame of reference on Mars, and you will have another type of motion.
Okay. Hope this satisfies him. Okay, so then there's an interesting question by Sitendra Kashyap. So he's asking, does Bhagavatam provide some understanding of movement of various kinds of tectonic plates also?
Of the tectonic plates? I think that would be a question more for one of our devotees, Pracharananda Prabhu, who is a geologist. It may. I have not encountered it directly, but there may be. I'm not going to say no because it may be there, but I have personally not seen it. Maybe the thing is that it's not going to be immediate. If you have to look at it, at the Bhagavatam with the eyes of a geologist to be able to see such things. Just like what we're seeing here right now is a physicist and an astronomer looking at the fifth canto.
Yes, right. So in general, this tectonic understanding apparently kind of supported by geological evidences. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. If you can find something on that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Also, I might add here that the plate tectonics is a controversial issue sometimes in geology.
Yes,
it's not a given. The geologists have theories about plate tectonics, and it's a controversial issue. So take that into consideration as you are thinking about applying plate tectonics onto this.
Okay, thank you. So then there is a question by Bisalakshi, which she's asking, are these, I mean, he's saying, are there assumptions made in developing these models? So he's perhaps referring to the models you developed. So that would prove. So
Yeah, there are tons of assumptions, and I have tried to make them very explicit. For example, one of the assumptions that I gave here is that, okay, what if we are, put this distance from the center of Mount Meru to Bharadvarsha to be the distance from the North Pole to Kanyakumari. That's one assumption. And then I made another assumption. I said, well, let forget about that assumption. Try to do another different one, which is that distance is actually from the North Pole to the South Pole, and that distance correlates to the from the center of Bhu-Mandala to the edge of Saptadvip. These are some different assumptions, and they gave different results, right? So what we're doing is we're applying assumptions and seeing how far, like, what are the predictions that these assumptions give us. What's important in all of this is for us to always be honest about when we're making an assumption, so that we can always go back to it and say, like, well, here we made an assumption, but it's, we could have made something else. And if we do something else, what changes in our model, right? So that here was an assumption that we changed, and the model changed, and we saw different interesting things about it.
Yes, right. Okay, thank you. So there is a question by Tushar Kukreti. He's asking, if Earth is moving clockwise and Sun is moving slightly anti-clockwise, then how about other planets moving on what correlation?
So what we're seeing is that in here that the Sun is moving clockwise, right? Well, yeah, the planets are moving around the Sun. This clockwise motion, actually, you could see it more. The way that the Bhagavatam explains it is like, imagine that this is more like the plate underneath, this map underneath is moving clockwise, and then that the planets are moving around the Sun. So that's what will create these spirals. That's what will create the spirals, because the planets are still going around the Sun.
Yes, right. Okay, thank you. So there is a question by Yes Karwade. So he's asking, as our eyes are made of 5 tattvas, and with this we are not able to see spiritual objects. And Prabhupada ji said that there is life on moon. Is it possible for us to capture them with cameras, or we require siddhis? And sometimes we capture some spiritual objects with camera. Are they all fake? And is it possible for us to see other objects with our subtle body? So,
well, those are a lot of questions. I will address these things next time, because now we're getting into the things that we cannot see.
exactly.
But just to give you a little bit of taste of it, right now we have cameras that are able to look into the infrared, right? Infrared cameras. And we also are able to have cameras that are able to see in the X-rays, like that. And you could say that these are mystic cities. You could say that this is mystic city.
Yes, right.
What are mystic cities? Mystic cities are nothing more than just very subtle technology. And science has been able to develop some of it at this point. Will it be able to do it in the future? I don't know. It depends on how we continue developing technology. And how, but we have there's the city where you can fly, right? Well, guess what? We have been able to develop that city, and through planes and rockets and all that. So there's a possibility.
Yes, right. Probably if you understand mind better, maybe we can approach technologically.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if we start understanding better the mind, the tanmatras, the uh, the intelligence, all of these things, and we might be able to develop technology with that.
Yes, correct. Okay, so thank you. So there's a question, if I pronounce the name correctly, Raquel Theodoro Amancio da Silva. So he's asking, see, I don't know, do
She,
you, yeah,
it's a she.
okay, I'm not familiar with such names. Do you think that inability of explaining the visible universe with the scriptures can weaken the faith of devotees, as happened in Catholic Church? How can we separate the scientific approach from the spiritual without losing the faith?
Well, I think that something is important here. One is that we're not asking people not to believe in science, or not to use their senses or their logic. In fact, one of the things that is so appealing about the Vedic understanding of the world and the universe and of life is that it doesn't ask you to just believe. The beginning of the Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, which means now you should inquire into the absolute truth. It doesn't say now you should believe in the absolute truth. It says now you should inquire. So it's a question of personal realization of what is being given. So we don't want to say like, okay, disassociate completely, you know, from what science says, because science is based on observation and on rationale, right? Now, what we do not want to do is what the Christians did back back with, I believe, Saint Augustine, who married their theology with a specific model of Aristoteles. They said, oh, Aristoteles has a very good physical model. You know, he explains things so nicely, and that is our understanding of Christianity. And then what happened? Well, a model is a model, right? A model is not theology, and a model is based on observation and is based on rational thinking. But because of that, when there are better observations and when there's better rationale behind it, then the model will have to change. And when when it started changing, then the Catholic Church had a very big crisis, because now it had married itself to this model, which is a temporary model, right? It had married their theology to this temporary model, and now this model was being under attack. And so now it was not the model that was being under attack; it was the whole church that was being under attack. And then it had a big crisis there, because now it was like, okay, now you should believe, you know, the words of Scripture, and forget about the science. So what we're saying here is not that this model, these models that I'm presenting, I'm not saying that this is the Bhagavatam. This is a way of understanding the Bhagavatam. This is how we can make sense of the Bhagavatam. And because I'm making assumptions here, right? And I'm being very honest where I'm making them and what does the Bhagavatam actually say. Then afterwards in the future, when somebody comes and says like, hey, you know what? This thing about science changed completely, or this thing that you're saying here is not true at all. And then, you know, we'll say like, okay, fine, you know, come up with a better model. and then we'll change it. But the scriptures remain the same. The theology remains intact. It's never under attack. And we are always faithful to the scriptures.
Yes, right. I think in that connection, Bharadraj Govind is asking another question. It is very surprising that there is so much of room for assumptions and interpretations in the Shastras, which are supposed to be part of Sabda Praman. I think you partly answered that. Maybe if you want to elaborate, you can.
Yeah, I mean, that is why, first of all, you have to inquire. It's not a question that, okay, let me open a book, let me read it, and now I know everything, right? One of the things is that you have to go to people who know, first of all. It's not because there is so much room for interpretation. So you have to go to somebody who knows about this, and some things you have to realize yourself also. So it's not simply a question of everything is hand-fed to you. There are things that you have to like go and actively inquire about because of this possibilities of interpretation, and not just in this astronomy or cosmology, but all in every single aspect of Shastra.
I think that's why we have many commentaries by many acharyas, but all
Yes.
sticking to the same theological boundaries. So that
Yeah, exactly. So as long as the Siddhanta remains the same, there are many possibilities of understanding. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, in the first chapter, some acharyas they criticize, not really criticize, but they say that Arjuna's lamentation is because he was too much attached. He was being put under the illusion of being attached to his family members, and his tears and all of that is just showing his attachment. And other acharyas are commenting that Arjuna's tears and his lamentation is because he is such a wonderful soul that he is he doesn't want to hurt anybody. It is his compassion, his tender heart. So there are different ways of looking at things, and it's the same scripture, and all of these are by bona fide acharyas.
Yes, correct. Okay, so there is another question by Sitendra Kashyap. So he's asking, since the universe is ever changing, so what is the time at which the Bhu-Mandala model given in Bhagavatam is given? So he's referring to at what time, because as per modern understanding, the whole planet formation and all this went through different epochs, stages. So at what stage, the Bhu-Mandala model refers to, that is given in Bhagavatam?
Well, the universe is changing, but it's changing very slowly. If you notice, like for a sun to come out, to just like finish its lifetime, it takes a long time, much longer than any of us will ever see. And so you could say that at least this version that is being given to us is 5,000 years old, which is in terms of in terms of the cosmos, it's nothing. 5,000 years is nothing. And if you take it to be at least the time of one manvantar, which is 1/14 of the day of Brahma, and the day of Brahma is quite big. It's still valid. Maybe by the next day of Brahma it will be different. Sure, that's no problem. The Puranas, the Puranas are histories. That's what Purana means. It's a history. So maybe in the next Purana, things might change a little bit, and that's okay. But at least for us and the rest of our lifetime right now, we can rely on the Bhagavatam as it was given.
Yes, thank you. So I think you already answered this question. So Nimai Sarkar is asking, these models are based on our scriptures. Is it an absolute model which can describe the universe?
What I'm presenting here are not absolute models. A model is something where you are using your God-given intelligence to make sense of what the scriptures are telling you, and you're using certain assumptions and certain observations to try to fit your observations to the scriptures. And so these models can change depending on the observations that you see, or on realizations about the logic that goes into them. So there is no absolute model. To ask for an absolute model is not possible, because your models are based on your senses, and your senses and your intelligence and your mind, they're not perfect. That is one of the four things that we're taught that happens, that the senses are imperfect, and because of that, we do make mistakes, and the mind is sometimes trying to cheat. So it's not, they cannot be absolute, because it's not based on absolute truth. They're based on observations, and trying to correlate those observations to an absolute truth, which is the scriptures themselves.
Yes, correct. So I think this exhausts all questions today. Maybe I can take up some questions from yesterday's, last session one's discussions. So,
sure. I mean, we still have, we have a few minutes left. So
yeah.
if you want.
So there was a question by Toshan Krishna. So he was asking how to understand that moon is farther than the sun. So would you like to throw some light on that? I think we'll discuss sometime.
Well, I'll be discussing that in the next session, when we looked at the vertical dimension. In here, I have not talked about the vertical dimension, which is how the planets stack on top of each other. Why is the moon on top of the sun? Why is Mercury on top of the moon, and all that? I have not. So there's still more to come, and I'll leave that for next time.
Yes. So there is a question by Sitender. So he's asking, since Bhagavatam is not going to change, will the model be relevant after 1 trillion of years?
The Bhagavatam is going to change, because it's a history. It's Purana, right? So it changes. The thing about that, that's why it's not Shruti, it's Smriti. The Puranas are Smritis, and therefore they change from constantly. The Shrutis are not.
Yeah, probably the theological doctrines do not change, but only the story.
Yes, the details, of the stories and on some of these things, they will be changing. They will be changing over time, and that is why it's called Smriti. But things like the Upanishads, they're Shrutis. Those do not change. The Vedas, the original Vedas, they're Shruti. They do not change, but the Smritis do. The Smritis, such as the Itihasas, the Puranas, like the Mahabharata, right? That's an Itihasa. That will change. The Bhagavatam, it's based upon like the the compiled history of the universe right now, it will change in trillions of years.
Yes. So there is a question in last session. Somebody was asking, is there any reference of interstellar bodies or galaxies? Like in our modern understanding of astronomy, we have plenty of those. So, so is there any understanding given in Srimad Bhagavatam, or we can figure out something?
Interstellar. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that next session, because then there's the question of, yeah, like how far away are the stars?
Yes, correct.
There are some stars that seem, to be like so much closer than we would want them to be, such as the pole star, such as the Ursa Major, also called the Big Dipper, or the 28 nakshatras, the 27 or 28 constellations that define the path of the moon. These ones are so some of them are said to be great personalities, and some of them are said to be planets, where there are great people, living there, like such as Indra, Agni, Datta, Vidatta. So there's many places like that.
Okay, thank you. So I think we don't have any further questions. Before we end the discussion, I would like to thank Dr. Mauricio Garrido for his time. It's early morning in his place, but still he took so much of labor and spare. I mean, explained so nicely such complicated ideas. We are really grateful to him. And before we end, let me project a screen of our future programs. So just a minute. Okay. So we'll be having our third session on vertical distances, size of universe, and nature of stars, and all those things on 21st February. And following that, the next week, we'll be having a special lecture on art and science of meditation on 28th Feb. Then there will be a 2-session series by Professor Gopal Gupta from University of Evansville. He would be talking about science and religion, conflict, cooperation, and coexistence. And then we'll be having a 6-session seminar from 21st March to 28th April, practical theology and philosophy from Bhagavad Gita. And following that, we will be having a mega international event. We are planning on that. So on science, spirituality, and sustainability, we call it 3S conference. And along with that, we are also having weekly Bhagavad Gita discussions. So any of you would like to be part of that, you can surely drop a WhatsApp or email to us. So we proceed chapter by chapter, verse by verse. So anybody interested, they can drop a message to us. Okay, thank you. So before you conclude, I would once again thank Dr. Mauricio Garrido for his time and such wonderful explanations. So we'll be looking forward to the next class, even more interesting than today. So, okay, thank you very much. So anything that Dr. Garrido you would like to say?
No, thank you very much. And I hope to see you all next week.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. We end the discussion here. We'll upload the YouTube, this video on our YouTube channel. So those who couldn't watch it, so they can watch it later also. Thank you.